Almost ready. Now we're live. Not live, thank goodness.
I'm alive.
You can do better. That was not your best joke. I can't let you start on that note. That was pretty bad.
I'm about to start. Hello and welcome to another episode of Tech Deck Karaoke. After a long hiatus, we are back. If you're new to the show, I want to give you a little bit of a description of what we do here. Our guest, which in this case is Larry McLean, comes on with a slide deck that they want to talk about that has some relevance in the world of technology. It can be business related, it can be technology related, it can be cutting edge, it can be legacy. No rules as long as they can explain that it sits in the world of tech. At the beginning of the show, we will introduce our guest. Then the guest will hand me the slide deck, and I, without ever seeing the slide deck, without having any clue what's in it, without ever knowing anything about any individual slide or the content, will attempt to present the slides and not sound like an idiot. It never works, but it's always fun. At which point, our moderator, Julia, will clown me, help Larry clown me, and then turn it over to the expert, the guest, in this case, Larry, to tell you what you were supposed to hear. Hopefully you're entertained and enjoy the show. Without further ado, let's get started. To get started, let's introduce our guest. Larry, if you would, tell our audience who you are, what you do, and what we're going to do here.
That's awesome, Joe. So excited to be here. So Larry McLean Forrester. We're a technology company, but really we're about business innovation and bringing technology as part of those efficiencies, organic growth, and all the wonderful things that current technologies can do for an organization.
Absolutely. And Larry, just for full disclosure for the audience, I believe you and I and our organizations have been working together for about 14 months, tightly coupled to be able to deliver some products. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. Said, hey, let's do some really leading edge things. Let's break some glass. We said, okay, let's do it. Sounds fun.
Agreed. Awesome. And I just want our audience to know I will have a lot of contextual information here, but I still have no idea what Larry wants to talk about. Now that we've introduced Larry, you should probably get to know our host and moderator, Julia. Julia, please introduce yourself to our audience.
Well, this is absolutely the role of a lifetime. I have been heckling Joe as an amateur for years, and they finally asked me to go pro. So that was pretty unexpected. I was gracious in my acceptance speech. For those who don't know me, I am our Director of Client Solutions at Continuum. So I work with all of our partners and customers to make sure that we have the right solutions and hopefully keeping the wheels on the wagon. So excited to be here. Like I said, role of a lifetime. And Joe, I'm chaos referee, but I'm rooting for Larry, just so you know.
As you should. Always root for the winner. Without any more babble from me, I think it's time to present some Larry content. So Julia, if you wouldn't mind, please bring up Larry's slides and let's see what I'm working with.
Did you sleep well last night, Joe? That's all I've got to ask, because there's some philosophy here right out of the gate. So hopefully you had plenty of rest.
We're getting deep right on the front end. So we're going to talk a little bit about truth and can I trust it? And this is a really interesting conversation in today's world already. We don't have to click to the next slide to know that this is a relevant technology discussion. Where might we be asking those questions? We might be asking those questions in the most expensive brand spanking new systems we're deploying today. I know that for me, I'm working with a lot of customers that have spent a lot of money bringing AI into their infrastructure to do simple tasks like a chatbot for sales or a chatbot for customer experience. And the projects are stalling because finding truth is a bit hard. But let's take a look at what Larry's opinion of this is. Truth, according to Aristotle, which is like going the way back machine to where like philosophy and the sciences started back in the Greek days before we gave up on thinking for ourselves. To say of what is that it is not, or of what is not that it is false. I'm not going to be able to read this. I have no idea what Aristotle is saying. I don't speak in pre-BC language, but I think what Aristotle is getting at is it's a little hard to find truth.
You gave up pretty early there, Joe. That might have been our record earliest white flag ever.
Give me a point, Julia. Mark one on the board.
That tally. Noted. Yes. That goes on the judge's scorecard. Absolutely.
Aristotle was well known for word soup. That was the problem.
It was.
Are we blaming Aristotle for this?
No.
For this Joe mess up?
I'm arrogant, not that arrogant. So if we move forward, let's start with some facts, just stuff that exists that we know that we can infer some information from. So in a study in 1906, it was said that we use only 10% of our brain. You may have heard that number. You may have heard a variation of that number, 13%, 25%, the rest. You may have seen movies talking about how limitless you can be with magical drugs to unlock the rest of that capacity. A lot of people firmly believe that that is a fact. We have a 1950s military study that says most body heat is lost through your head. Now, that's an interesting one. That is one that I firmly believe, based on no scientific research. Just somebody kind of told me that at some point. I wonder if it's true. 1958 study, goldfish have a 3-second memory. That's a very interesting study, especially in 1958. In fact, I'm questioning it already because my concern is, what effing technology did they use to test the memory of a goldfish in 1958? And then in 1929, we had a research paper that says an earthworm cut in half becomes 2 worms. I have a feeling that we're going to be surprised about some of this data. So we only use a small part of our mental resources is not correct. It is a highly generalized contextualization of a little tiny nugget of truth. I also just described the internet in 2026, a highly contextualized generalization of a little tiny nugget of truth. We can see across the board that even in our human brains, the things we say every day, there is data that is not factual because the science or the data change or whatever it may be. So it gets really interesting when we think about facts. And I love this conversation. I happen to have this conversation for several reasons often. But one of the things I say is that fact we think of as a static point in time eternity. Once it's fact, it's always true. That's not how the world works. At one point in human history, sometime in the BC era, the Earth was flat. That was the fact, and everyone accepted it. Then we went round with a solar system that orbited us. Then we orbit the sun in the solar system, and we had a bunch of planets, including Pluto. Then we realized Pluto wasn't a planet. Our facts are constantly changing. So, what does this mean to you in the tech world when we keep moving? How do we make decisions? We notice a need. We have to get information, which we could call context. We generate alternatives. We weigh the consequences, make a choice. So what does this mean? Gathering the information is gathering facts, except it's not. It's getting advice. It's searching. It's our own memories. Now, maybe in that facts come in, but most of us are not diving into authoritative sources to find the facts for every decision. We use a lot of opinion. We use a lot of belief. So if we look at where this goes, believability weight in your decision making is very interesting and very biased, right? There are a lot of different things we do to make a decision. One example in your brain of a bias to decision making would be the way in which you extrapolate your experience into broader generalized experience. So if you've lived in San Francisco all your life and you're in your 40s, you've experienced many earthquakes, some small, maybe a few moderate. So earthquakes are a normal occurrence to you. So your brain will automatically assume they're a normal occurrence for everybody, but they're not. You have a higher earthquake zone. You experience them more than other people. This same type of bias exists in our data systems. These same types of conflicts exist in our data system, and these same questions of fact exist. So moving forward, our decisions are affected by bias and paradigms. Our opinions are going to have bias, what we believe to be true versus what is actually true. So depending on how we look at a picture, or more importantly, who's looking at it, I've got a rabbit or I've got a duck. Then we're going to gather information. We want facts, and maybe we're looking hard for them, but what if we have limited or incorrect facts? How do we know the data we're pulling in is good? Now, if you use the internet, this is a hard thing to do, and you already know it's a hard thing to do. Most of your search engines don't even search. They just feed you the ad that was most highest paid. They're not looking for anything. They're just a coin-operated system. So when you're looking, it's really hard to dig down and find the facts, because anything you can find easily, somebody paid for you to see. And generally, that's going to have a bias, which is why they paid for it. So a data-driven organization that can get down to the facts and actually make coherent decisions based on verified data is going to be a much better organization overall. What you're going to get is a better success rate across the organization. We're now still doing human or AI inference, but we're doing it on a clean set of data that's been verified. So 3x more likely to report significant improvement is what PwC says. Customer acquisition improves by 23x. Profitability improves and operational costs improves. Right now, there are very few, if any, data-driven organizations, because under the covers of any organization is the dirty secret that isn't a secret. The data is low confidence. Everybody knows this. Your CRM is low confidence. Your ERP system is low confidence. Your unstructured data that your sellers and marketing teams and HR teams use is also low confidence. So how do we turn all that into a data-driven organization?
I had low confidence when you started this, but I have to be honest, Joe,
He's picking it up.
I'm a little impressed.
Yep, he's picking it up.
It hurts to admit, it really does.
So the quality and trust of your data is a differentiator. Yet we think of data and data hygiene as an expense. We just keep putting more money into it. I got to replicate it 48 times across the globe, and then I got to back it up, and then I got to make it immutable, and now people are attacking it, so I got to encrypt it. Oh, God, it's terrible. This is your gold mine. Data is the gold, and you're allowing your gold to be trash. That doesn't seem to make logical sense to me. So how do we get the quality to become the differentiator? So using an example from Ireland in 1841, we look at the census. Leading up to the famine, authorities relied on a census that suggested the population was around 8 million. So they planned how to handle a famine based on a piece of data. Turned out the data was not correct, so they improperly handled a crisis because they didn't start from clean source. The Mars Climate Orbiter crash, yet another data problem. 125 million oops. Right? I wish I could make 125 million oops and keep my job. But again, it's a data problem. A slight shift in the overall data caused a $125 million accident. And this is already happening in a lot of AI deployments. Whether it's $125 million on the back end or not, or whether they're reporting the actual cost or not, is a very different question. The exponential spread of data across an organization becomes another problem. We continue to spread it. We continue to give it out. We continue to replicate it. We continue to back it up. And in a lot of cases, we now don't know where it is. So it's low confidence. It's spreading out. We're paying to replicate it multiple times for redundancy. And oh, by the way, it's a spider web across our organization because we're trying to feed little bits and pieces to this siloed app and that siloed app. So the data impact of decision-making and making AI development is where the rubber really hits the road in my mind. And I don't know if this is the point Larry wants to drive home, but to me, this is why when we take that brilliant AI model off the internet that we've been using to do all our homework and we put it over corporate data, everything fails every time because the corporate data is too small to find the truth in the noise. The LLM itself is trained on exponentially more data, the entire corpus of human knowledge. Your corporate data is a grain of sand on a beach in comparison, and it's far dirtier and harder to figure out the truth from than public internet knowledge that has credible sources, curated sources, and a million of other different data characteristics. So this is a unicorn.
Is it a unicorn, Joe?
It doesn't look like a unicorn.
It's a unicorn with armor plating. He's got a little.
This is maybe a unicorn on roids, right? Like maybe a little coke and roids got the unicorn to this point, but I don't think it's a unicorn. I'm guessing rhinoceros, but I'm not a doctor. So what we have here is just a slight one-off, right? Like it's a four-legged mammal. It's got a horn coming out of the head. It's very close, but it's not right. And that's what we're getting at dirty data in our AI system. And it's not just causing hallucinations. It's bleeding money in real time because those hallucinations cause retries, additional token takes, additional CPU and compute consumption. you're spending money to get the wrong answer and then letting the wrong answer propagate through the rest of the system. So data, accurate data, is the fuel of excellence. If you want to be a company over the next 10 or 20 years, you need to circle back to the root cause of most of your problems and start looking at your data. Data is an enabler. It becomes the North Star. I can see where I've been. I can see where I'm at. I can correlate it across, and then I can use it to do interesting things. But I have to have it first, and it has to be clean. Now, these are two problems you have today. First, your data isn't clean. Go ask the people that work with the data. Find somebody that can give you an honest answer without thinking they're going to lose their job, and everyone will agree. Your data is not clean. But the second problem is a lot of the things you want AI to do involve a human process that you haven't documented and no one else has. So how are you going to replace humans in a process that people don't know how it works and your systems don't know? Again, we've got to get the data. It's all got to get in. It's got to get cleaned. Otherwise, you just won't get the results with AI. Now, that's my opinion, but my ask is that you assume I'm wrong and go do it your way. Impact of trusted data. Better and faster decisions, less rework, greater agility, and brand trust. Cleaning your data first is the cheapest, easiest way to exponentially increase the results of your AI or BI project. And that's all I have to say.
That was pretty good, Joe. I keep giving you things that we both know and share. So, Julia, I'm sorry I teed him up pretty well, but it was
disappointed.
Good.
I really expected a crash and burn. But let's just recap for the audience at home. We've questioned Aristotle. We established Coke and Royd usage. We're flat earthers. I'd say that was all around a good time. That was.
It was.
Pretty entertaining.
We even got to see Joe completely choke on trying to quote Aristotle. I mean, the guy was brilliant, but like that is not clarity in writing.
I had to read it 3 or 4 times before I got, okay, I can explain this now. Yeah.
It looked like most of the hallucinations I get from enterprise AI systems.
That's exactly what it is.
No, I was impressed. I will say I knew Larry's plan ahead of time to have some dirty data up front, and I was blown away that you questioned it right off the bat. I mean, first of all, that was bold to say, your facts in this PowerPoint look a little off, Larry, but that was impressive.
I could have masked them a little bit better, but I already had too many slides, so yeah.
I see that all the time. I was just talking to somebody yesterday, and I used an example. I was talking to a friend, and they were wondering how much they should consume liquid-wise to stay hydrated on average. And without thinking about it, there was data in my head. And so I said 8 liters a day. And as soon as it came out of my mouth, I'm like, where did that quackery come from? So I went back and researched. It came from nonsense. It was like nonsense that got shifted through the telephone game until it became more nonsense. And then some Marine drill instructor put it in my head and it stayed, right? And like at the end of the day, it's really hard to figure out how much you should drink because almost all of hydration science is funded by Gatorade to sell Gatorade.
True. And our body weight factors in and all this other stuff. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
All right, Larry, what did you think? I mean, are you ready to follow that?
Sure, I can follow that. It's good because Joe and his experience is slightly different from my experiences, but it still grounds to the same points and the same root causes, which I like. So honestly, when I brief it, it'll be different, but probably still pretty good, probably similar.
You know what's funny here, Larry? Like we have these phrases in tech that we use, and we'll throw them around, especially on the technical side. One of the phrases we throw around a lot from the engineering and architecture side is GIGO, garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly.
I hire the wrong person, ask them to do a job, I get garbage. I take garbage data, put it in a system, I get garbage. It doesn't matter where you apply garbage in, garbage out. It's always correct. We all say it, but it seems like every major tech revolution just ignores that advice.
It's that plus, and I'll carry that to the next level, which is building AI systems, building capabilities, advanced capabilities today. The vast majority of companies we're seeing, they're asking their tech team who were never hired for this work to now all of a sudden morph themselves into AI geniuses and deliver something. And that's a challenge. Then you put the dirty data layer underneath, and it's a recipe for disaster.
Exactly. The thing I've started asking the executive team, CIOs and such that I work with is, I know you're thinking about deploying that, or you're in the middle of deploying that AI inference and RAG stack. What I would ask your team to do is project the 5 years cost of the RAG and inference cycle. Because if you pump dirty data into a RAG and inference cycle and store it in a RAG vector database, you're going to have compounding cost exponentially growing over time. Not just the data size, but as more dirty data gets in, you've got to re-optimize, you've got to recompress, you've got to go back through and figure it out.
Yes.
You're going to end up having to do the hygiene in the most expensive possible system ever if you let it get to that point. Anyway, Larry, I think you got things to say and I want to hear them.
How gracious of you to co-brand this, Larry. I mean, I like that you put Joe's name on there too.
I did. It's his show. I felt obligated.
I appreciate it because in general, I love me some me.
As do most people love some Joe. All right. Slide, Julia, please. All right. Truth, according to Aristotle. These are the early depictions, so to speak, of truth. And Aristotle said, to say what is that is not, or of what is not that is false. So if you break that down, if you say something that is, but it's not, or something's not, but it really is a false statement.
Yeah.
So to break that down, to say what it is that is, and what is not that is not, is true. Your negatives and your positives here. Slide. There we go. So only use 10% of our brain. This is done, a study by William James, and he deduced we only use 10% of our brain. This is partially true, and we'll get to that in the next slide. 1950s military study where volunteers wore Arctic survival suits found that most body heat is lost through your head. This is actually true, but there's a caveat to it I'll unveil in a moment. The study by Howes and Ferland, those are actually some of my ancestor names. So goldfish have a 3-second memory. This is not true, and you'll see. And a 1929 research by Thomas Joyce, another distant relative, earthworm cut in half becomes 2 worms. Let's reveal the true answers here, Julia.
Joe, do you have any celebrity relatives? I feel like you're already losing. Larry's already got you beat.
I not that I'm aware of. I've got 2 dogs named after celebrities. Does that count?
Well, they are cute dogs. So. On
that Howes side of the family, Julia, I have an ancestor who bought his land from Miles Standish. That's how early we were. My other grandparents came from Canada. So, yeah, that was a big difference there.
See, I'm different. I fit very well into a long line of nobodies.
So on this study about the part of our brain, two factors here. The small part of our brain is what he said. He didn't say 10%. Plus, they didn't know anything about these silent glia cells. So again, to Joe's point earlier, information that was true once may not be true anymore. But yet we still hold on to it because we've all heard that phrase. We only use 10% of our brains. In the Arctic survival suits, yeah, they didn't wear hats. Of course, their heads were going to lose the most. They were wearing these big Arctic thermal suits, lost no body heat that way, and all went out their heads because they were wearing no hats. Okay. Yeah.
Larry, that's a really interesting point because facts are often contextually dependent. Meaning when you change the context of the fact, you can't assume that the fact remains true.
So very true, Joe. And that's where information starts to gain context versus just data. And that was not a real study on the goldfish. They can actually remember things for months. I guess it just made people feel better because they put them in these tiny bowls. And then the earthworms actually has a head, actually has a tail. The tail will die. The head that can grow a new tail. So anyway, those were things. The whole point of this aspect is because of our own personal bias, because of our own personal beliefs, and Joe said it earlier, what we've been told for years becomes ingrained in our heads, and that becomes now a paradigm. Because if someone were to come to you today and you believed every one of these things and told you differently, you would be less inclined to believe them. And that's true with the data in our systems. That's true with the information that we process on a daily basis.
It's called the anchor bias, Larry.
Exactly
first thought that your first time you describe a topic, subject, whatever, anchors your brain to that description. Anyone else, no matter how right they are, will have a harder time changing the original thing.
That's so true. Let's walk through, Julia, how we actually make decisions. So the process we go through, we notice a need to make a decision. Then we gather information, and we're going to hold on to this one here in the next couple of slides, but the gathering information piece here is key because we obtain facts, we grab advice, we do some of our own searching, and we use some of our own memories. Then we generate alternatives, we weigh the consequences, and then we make a choice and act. Every one of these is followed in some form or fashion, whether heavily or lightly. Slide, please. So let's rule out if you have no facts. Well, if you have limited or no facts, does that mean you're not going to go to step 5? No, you're still going to make the decision. You still have to make the decision. So we're going to rely upon emotion, memory, opinions of others. Now we're into some really gray areas. And this is important because at the end of the day, you need to pay attention to what am I using to make my decisions with? And the opinions of others, that's very key because that's who you're going to search. Ray Dalio, who I love, he has some great thoughts. He'll tell you there are, in typical organizations, most decisions are made autocratically by the top-down leader or democratically, where everyone shares the same level of perspective and vote. Neither one is good.
Then
what he prescribes is a weighted opinion. And what you're looking for is who are the most believable.
Yeah.
And again, keep in mind, we're still down that vein where we have no facts. We're struggling now to try to pull up information that I can have confidence in my decision. So in the believability factor, at least here you're trying to rule out some level of subjectivity and make it as objective as possible. But you're still stuck in subjectivity land.
Yeah, I love that, Larry, because I have definitely sat in hundreds of billions of corporate meetings where they were trying to get quorum across everyone in the room, even though half of the people in the room had no experience or knowledge in the space the decision was being made. And it just seems like a really inefficient way to use everything.
Absolutely. So who has repeatedly and successfully accomplished the thing in question? Who can logically explain the cause and effect relationships? That's when you start to weed out the pretenders, right?
Mm-hmm. Personally, I enjoy our dictatorship at Continuum. I think Joe does a pretty good job.
I try to be benevolent.
Nailing it, right, bud.
Well, and Joe covered this one really, really well, actually. It's our bias. There's some great folks. Joel Barker was a great one. I read his book. That would be a good one, Joe. The Business of Paradigms. Yeah. Whereas it kind of goes back to the early facts. You can expect certain things are true. Then as something else comes through that's not in alignment with that, your paradigm filter just lets it pass right on by. So therefore, you're limiting your view and your perspective of things because, again, I'll tie it all the way back to because you lack the data.
Yeah, and this one's also interesting because if you look at these two pictures visually, you're generally going to have to look at only one in your visual field to see the rabbit or the duck. If you're looking at both, the contradiction in your brain doesn't work. Our brains don't like to hold contradictions.
Well, and it goes back to your comment a minute ago about the anchor bias. Whichever one you looked at first is probably the one you're going to lock onto.
100%.
Yeah. All right, Julia, slide. Okay, now let's get to the facts. This is the really good part because I want to get away from the subjectiveness of my decisions. I really want facts. But if I have limited or incorrect facts, go back one, please. If you have limited or incorrect facts, you still are taking that position. Bad data, and I love this phrase, bad data just means you find out later that you made a bad decision. Mm-hmm. You're still making the decision, you have firm belief in it, and then it's like, oh darn. Apparently that wasn't a good decision. I had the facts, but they weren't true. Okay. And this one, Joe, you covered this pretty well. So data-driven organizations make better decisions. True. But there's a caveat. We'll go back to our comment about context. The red banner at the bottom is really the important piece here. The facts and the numbers speak for themselves throughout the slide. And these are, studies by reputable organizations. But it can be misleading. Because if the data is low quality, narrowly scoped, or used without context, becoming data-driven really becomes very hollow. It's not a guarantee of accuracy. You're just saying, you're just using data on the belief that it's all good, because that's our inherent belief every time when someone provides us data that it's automatically true,
Yeah.
but it may not be. That's the differentiator, quality and trust of your data.
Well done, Larry. Well done.
Thanks, Joe. I have a lot to live up to here. This is tough.
That's
a lot
true.
of pressure. So, and the point here, again, we believe things to be true because we want them. When the authorities created the census, they believed it, right? Because we sent people out, all that information must be true. They didn't look for the variables that occurred here. They didn't speak Irish to the people who spoke Irish, and they didn't visit the remote regions. And the people who the census went to visit were biased in the fact that they thought they were just going to tax them more. 2 million people, potentially up to 2 million people, were left without food because of this error. Significant.
Larry, that's a really important point. When you look at your data-driven infrastructure, it's not a technology problem isolated. In fact, there are no isolated technology problems. Everything is a technology combined with human problem, but this one is exacerbated. I'll use a CRM as an example. The typical RM is not a leader in any way, shape, or form. They're a manager on their best day. And I'm not saying all RMs are great ones out there, but what they do is they call and hound their people about the quota they're not seeing. Well, great. When you're on the phone with your people, they're not selling. So this is definitely not helping the problem. I don't know what another level of reporting is.
That's a judging aspect. Yeah.
That's all it is. It's like a shaming exercise for no reason, right? And then we all get on a call every week to look over a dashboard to talk about what's in the dashboard. I'm like, why do you have dashboards if people need to get on and say that's not the point of a dashboard. It's either the people or the dashboard, you morons. Anyway, sorry.
And it's what happened yesterday, not what's happening tomorrow.
Exactly.
Right. But then what you've done with this is you've incentivized your sellers to report inaccurate information, because if they put deals accurately into the data, then they have to answer mindless questions about the deal for all eternity. If they just keep that deal in their back pocket until it closes, then they can put it in the system, close it, look like a winner. And this is one example. This is throughout your entire data stack. We need to make sure that we're not incentivizing people to put in the wrong data so that they don't hit the next layoff or whatever.
I'm feeling really bad right now because I had another example I didn't include. It was probably more pertinent. Is in the history of China, they reported the annual bushels of wheat and stuff that they had harvested. They were incentivized, much like you just described, to report higher yields because that's what the local people wanted. No, you have to show more, and they did. And then as that aggregated up to the government, they then started selling wheat to all kinds of other countries.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they're out of wheat.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, those numbers were inflated and it wasn't based on truth because of the coercion and lost context and everything else.
Yeah. Another similar story out of Russia. As Stalin took over and took full control of the economy, they basically sent out quotas. Like they controlled the whole manufacturing, all economy. Everyone was handed a quota. If you made shoes, you had a quota. So there were stories through that era of like, a factory that made nails would be told to make 900 pounds of nails. So the owner's like, all right, cool. Built one big cast and make one 900-pound nail. It fits the data. It checks the box. It doesn't solve the problem.
There you go.
Exactly.
All right.
Success. Yeah. On the Mars climate orbiter crash, the whole point of this one, again, was each one of these were brought in for purpose. And it was the conversion was wrong. It came all the way back to the data. And because the data wasn't curated, it wasn't checked, it wasn't agreed upon, $125 million crashing into the surface of Mars. And then, Julia, slide please on the next one, the exponential spread of data across the organization. I teach this at Washington University, where since 2003 timeframe, we collect everything. No one would have imagined in 2002 that what you ate for dinner and you took a picture of it and you posted it on social media would become data. But it is. and organizations have figured out how to use it. So that exponential spread of data across the organization has happened. We collect it, and there's lots of it. The problem is, especially for an organization, where did I put it? Where are my data stores? Well, that's in the marketing department. Well, that's over in the sales department. That's in the customer service department. That's over in and you get copy after copy after copy of those silos of goodness, and they're not rationalized. All that data is stored in disparate places. Especially your data entities, your customers, your products, location. How many copies do I have and which one's accurate? If I'm building an app and I say, okay, I need customer data. Well, we have it in 6 places. Which one do I trust? Which one is right? Which one's kept up to date? So which facts comes back to full circle? Which facts do you believe here? I'm going to skip over these. Joe, you did really well here. Basically, again, data impact on decision-making, AI development, whether it's revenue and corrupt data poisoned their ad targeting algorithms, whether bad data led to high return rates because their product information was incorrect, customers received products that didn't match what was described. I mean, you've seen scenarios like this where a salesperson will come in and maybe they have stale data and they're pitching something that isn't necessarily true anymore.
Good. I'm not a fan of all these concessions, by the way, Larry. We're not being hard enough on Joe. He's gotten a lot of compliments today.
It's hard because we speak the same language. You know, it's tough. It's tough.
Just really find it in your heart, Larry. You can do this.
I know. I'm trying. But we're brothers of data. Yeah.
Okay.
So this is a unicorn, right? It's a fabled creature. Again, an opportunity where it has a single horn. Has 4 legs. It's an animal, right? But it's not. What's a unicorn, Joe? Tell me what a unicorn is.
A unicorn is a mythical creature. In our tech world, we refer to billion-dollar valuation startups as unicorns, but I specifically use unicorns for the best of the best that I get to work with. Like the people that when you work next to them, you just know like they are excellence. That's what I use that term for.
That's excellent. I like it. All right. Now it starts to bring it home a little bit. Data. Not just any data, accurate data. That's key. That's the fuel for excellence. And you can see in the pillars at the top, it's my decision making. If I want to have any AI capabilities, my sales, my marketing, customer support, you name it across an industry, across your business units, data is the fuel, and it has to be good data. So that's your North Star, right? And my recommendation from here for any organization, get your information house in order. Don't go jumping out and jump onto an AI project when you don't have good data or you can't rationalize what data you do have to support that endeavor. MIT will tell you 95% of the AI initiatives aren't delivering as expected. Multiple reasons, but data is a big one. So create your ecosystem of trusted data, an ecosystem where you house your good quality data where everyone has had a chance to take a look, make sure that it's the right data, make sure it's curated data. You go into an organization and typically decisions have been made from experience and gut feel over and over again. So you have 3 individuals who you consider all experts. Pose a question to them. Do they all have the same answer? What's the best practice here? And you might have those 3 separate answers. This is a forcing function to get those 3 in a room and say, you must agree. I want you to agree on what's the best practice here. What does this product do? How does this service work? Then that becomes the curated data you put into your source of truth. Force those most knowledgeable to curate that data. Then you need to govern it. As Joe said, as I've said, it comes back to you can't stick it in once and just ignore it. It has a refresh rate. It has an expiration date. You have new data coming in. You have to govern it. So you have to build a process for that. And then lastly, organizational change management. You have to make people use it.
Yeah, I agree completely.
All right. Impacts of trusted data. I think most of these are pretty well known. What am I going to have? I'm going to have better, faster decisions. Less rework. Think about the whole rework possibility. If you know that the answer isn't correct the first time, then you're sending people back to do that activity again, and potentially again, and potentially again. Incredible waste. Cost money, cost time. So that leads into the next one, greater agility. If you know your data is good and you can make the decision the first time, or your response actions are accurate and fast, someone says, let's create a new app, and you have your data house in order, it's pretty easy. Amazon's a great example of this. And then lastly, your brand trust. You don't want to make bad decisions. You don't want to expose data where it shouldn't be. Again, it comes back to organic growth. The organic growth at the end of the day is, how do I improve my operation without acquiring new things? How do I become more efficient, less costly, which is the same, but greater agility and responsiveness? How do I make my organization better? It's going to save me money, going to make me more competitive. That's organic growth.
Yeah. Love it.
That's it.
Larry, this is so timely with what's happening with AI and just the market and in general. It drives me nuts. I've been around too long. Like, the universe needs to take me out soon, because I'm just tired of seeing the same problem recycle. Like, when we went to cloud, the practitioners said, fix the data. And everyone said, cloud. And then we were in the cloud and they're like, oh crap, this data access is a problem. So then we distributed our data all over the place, built new silos that we weren't going to hygiene. So now we've got crap data replicated to crap data, not replicated or reconciled. Yes. And then we were like, hey, let's do big data. And all the architects were like, we should clean the data first. And everyone's like, that's stupid. So
that's really hard. Yeah. That's going to be hard. Yeah.
And now we're like, AI and RAG will solve it. I'm like, even if they can, let me describe what you're trying to build. You're going out and buying a Ferrari. You're getting some GPUs from Jensen, and you're getting some rapid, cool software that people have spent billions of dollars creating. You're stitching it all together, and then you're putting 8.2 octane fuel into it with dirty data. Dumb.
Yeah.
Just dumb. There's no way around it. That's dumb.
If you haven't cleaned your data house and you're building automation, you're just going to get bad answers faster.
Yeah.
Right?
And AI is going to be so fast that you're not going to be able to jump to the next quarter and convince Wall Street you didn't make a mistake. It's rapid now. You need to fix the data.
Yes.
Very passionate, Joe. This was quite the little that was enlightening.
Sorry, Larry hit a nerve. I apologize.
I told you, Julia, we're brothers of data. And
I know. We're going to have to separate you two. Like, I just see you passing notes in the back of the class, like teachers getting upset.
Are you boys paying attention? Yeah. No, not really.
You would think the 5 lines of Valium I snorted before this call would have helped it, but amen.
Okay, on that note, I take back everything I said, Joe. Your presentation was terrible. Larry was just, he aced it. I have to tell you, the way that you wove that story together of the real consequences of inaccurate data, it really resonated in a way that it hasn't. Of, you almost think about it as an IT budget, right? Of like, nobody pays attention to it until something goes wrong, and all it takes is that one time. It takes one time, and then you're $125 million in the hole. People are starving. Like, there's real impacts of dirty data.
But it's not just $125 million in the hole. It's also the huge chunk of money you spent on the system that cost you $125 million. Like, the $125 million is the tip of that iceberg. Right. That's what's crazy here. Like, it's like everyone right now is going, well, AI is stalling out in my environment. Let's throw some more money at the problem. When in the history of the human race has that ever worked?
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. And I haven't been able to really resonate with folks as much as I would like, because it comes back to, it's the data. You have to make sure. But I've also had organizations, I've given a presentation on, is your data ready for AI? And everyone says, well, I'm not sure what my data maturity level is. I think I'm only a level 1, level 2. I get it, but you don't have to fix it all at once. What's your critical business process? What's the critical data that feeds that process? Let's start there. Mm-hmm. I can have as we call it, a bottom-up approach. So let's just like we do with any project, let's decompose the project into the components. If one of the components is data, and what types of data, how good does it need to be? You've decomposed into, what do I need to deliver? Yeah. Okay, go get it, right? Yep. And now you've also created opportunities for your data entities from the top down. If I need tons of customer data to feed this project. Why don't I also kind of take the advantage of now let's fix customer data across the enterprise, right?
Yeah.
So it's a top-down, bottom-up approach.
The beautiful thing about the AI world we're in is AI is really smart. It can do a really good job. Look, it's just predicting the next word really fast and really accurately, but it's able to achieve amazing results with that methodology. Great. But it's so good that I don't have to fix every piece of your data. You don't need to get it to white glove inspection from a Marine Corps drill instructor. Trust me, you don't want to have to live through that. The more clean it is, the better your results and the lower the cost. Just little projects to clean up little areas that are being fed into that system will exponentially increase the results and reduce the cost. It's the no-brainer decision no one's looking at. And I have a theory. I haven't worked it all out yet, but if you look at the companies that are proposing just throw more RAG and inference at it versus the companies that make money when you throw more RAG and inference at it, it's 100% overlap. I wonder if that has any influence on that recommendation.
And I always, lots of times I give the example of Amazon because I've always been impressed, and Walmart's actually really good too. But Amazon understood early. You go back to 2003-4 timeframe with the Bezos memo. If you're a system owner in our organization, you will expose your data through an API. They wanted to know what they had. They were doing data catalogs in 2003-2004 timeframe. They were an early adopter. They understood it. Now you look at them and they go, well, I can do pharmaceuticals. I can do my own delivery. I can do cloud service. I can pretty much do anything. Why? Because their data house is in order.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, the average Fortune 1000 is running around on tribal knowledge and human in the loop phone calls to figure out which button to click and who to talk to.
Yes.
Right. Yep. Well, when they say about, just throw more RAG and inference at it, the way that I relate to it is through cars, of course, like shocker, right? But I think about, restoring a car. You can use Bondo, but you can only use so much Bondo before it becomes
good one.
You can only patch certain pieces of it. You can't build an entire car out of Bondo. So that's...
When I bought this ranch, it was the Bondo car. It was layers of duct tape and bubble gum and Bondo from end to end of 120 acres. So you go out and try and fix one problem, and you're now in a 6-week quagmire that cost you $15,000, and all you were trying to do was replace a fence post.
Wow.
Exactly.
Wow. Now you're going to buy dilapidated homes in Italy and go through the same thing or something? Once is enough?
I'm mostly just sitting around all day hoping for an aneurysm.
On that note, wonderful transition. Thank you for the segue, Joe. You set that up nicely.
No, I'm not. I'm mostly hoping people wake up, fix their data, and let AI do its job for them because we can innovate again. We just have to get out of our own dirty data way.
Yes.
I see what you're doing too. Because you're like, Julia wouldn't kick me while I'm down. Like, I'm all depressed. She wouldn't hand me a loss when I'm in this state. You're wrong. I will. Larry, hands down, winner. The storytelling element, I think you really tied it all together. I'm sorry, Joe. I really wanted to come out of the gate swinging, your first win, but couldn't do it.
I would agree. Larry tells the story well. He's got the right anecdotes, but Larry also has the deep data background, right? Like, I dance in the data space. Larry's lived it.
I tried to do my best to stumble him out of the gate with Aristotle, Julia. I think it may have helped.
That may be your new riddle. That was quite challenging, but you managed to win it.
We'll have to have James Urquhart back on in his new role because he was the ultimate stump Joe because he popped on and it was like 5 slides of physics concepts.
Oh my gosh.
James knows me well enough to know that I can't algebra. So like every slide made no sense.
Yeah. And my goal really was, and maybe that's just the passionate technologist. I want the data message to get out. So I was okay that you were able to explain it well because I think again, 2 different perspectives, but neither one wrong. I like it because you're spreading the word.
I love it. Well, Larry, congratulations on your win. I'm getting very used to losing the show I host. We're for those that are new, I think we're 30-ish episodes in, and I have a big fat goose egg of a win record. But one of these days, I'm going to do the presentation better than the guest.
We'll see. Not today. Larry, enjoy the highlight of your career. I hope it was everything it was cracked up to be.
Yep, it's all just downhill from here. You're right.
Brilliant. Larry, thank you for coming on. Julia, thank you for keeping us on track and clowning me. I guess that's the show.
That's
Awesome.
it. See you
Thank
next time.